Visit of the interim president of Syria to Turkey is quite important. Now we are going to talk about it. Javed Rana is joining us to discuss the latest meeting between the president and the interim president of Syria. Javed, thank you so much for joining us here on A News once again. It is quite an important situation that has unfolded about Syria and about the situation in the Middle East. So let's start talking about it. President Erdogan emphasized the joint efforts against PKK and Daesh terrorism, with the U.S. maintaining its support for YPG during the meeting with the Turkish Syrian president and the interim president. So how might this renewed Turkish-Syrian partnership impact U.S. policy in the region?
I think the U.S. policy is a doldrum insofar as Middle East is concerned, because we have to see in a broader picture. Right now, the focus of the U.S. is onto the Gaza, it is onto the occupied West Bank. What kind of strategy is going to be there in place in Syria, that is not very clear. But going by the track record, we do know that the USA has been supporting all anti-Turkiya terrorist groups like PKK. They've been supporting it. And as a result of which, there have been thousands of casualties inside Turkey. Thousands of people have been killed over the course of last 4 or 5 decades. So in a broader picture, I think now the situation has changed altogether, because Assad regime was playing on all sides. It was behind the scene, was in communication with the apartheid state of Israel. At the same time, it was in communication with the Iranians. It was getting all kind of support from Iran and Russia. But now, with the change of guard in Damascus, I think something extraordinary has already happened. Turkey did help HTS to help HTS to form the government in terms of the weapon supplies, in terms of all kind of humanitarian support, when it was controlling parts of the Syria before taking over Damascus. And after change of guard in Damascus, I think Turkey's help has come out in a big way. But again, the bigger question here is, now Turkey does expect now that this is the high time that the terror groups in Syria needs to be eliminated. Now, what are the options available with the HTS government? It has one option straight away to use force against these terrorist groups, but obviously that is going to cause more instability inside Syria. It needs stability badly at this particular point of time. HTS government has been negotiating with these groups that somehow or the other to mainstream in the political system. I think that has not fully, it has not been able to negotiate them in a manner where these groups can be basically mainstreamed into the political system. At the end of the day, this is going to be the solution. But in case the negotiations don't succeed, then obviously HTS government will have to go after these terrorist groups, because it has left with no option at a time when Turkey has been providing all kind of assistance. Then Turkey does expect that in return, HTS government will come down hard against these anti-Turkey terror groups.
Well, Javed, let's talk about the situation that Turkey currently hosting 3.6 million Syrian refugees, which is quite important for Turkey, making it the largest host country for displaced Syrians. Could this normalization of relations lead to a structured refugee repatriation plan? And if so, what guarantees would need to be in place to ensure a safe and voluntary return?
Well, obviously, in Turkey, there are better job opportunities. It's a kind of country where people would love to visit and love to live. So now many Syrian refugees may not opt to go back to Syria at a time when it needs reconstruction, at a time when the political stability has not been fully restored, at a time when Israel's threat of aggression continues. It continues to linger on because it carried out 800 terrorist attacks inside Syria after change of guard in Damascus. So I think then also there are least job opportunities in Syria. Nonetheless, the good thing is that many large a significant number of these refugees, they are willing to return, and some of them have already returned. But saying that all of them would return in future, that largely depends on what kind of the political stability is there in Syria, what kind of the security situation is there in Syria. But again, something we previously discussed, it also really depends in what manner HTS government, in terms of its military strength, stabilize itself and go after the terrorist groups which still continue to carry out these terrorist attacks. I think that is a bigger challenge, but we have to also see a bigger picture. You may recall when there was this Arab Spring in Syria, no other Muslim country was willing to take Syrian refugees. And then Germany said, we are taking Syrian refugees despite the fact that they are the Muslims. They have not been accommodated by the Arab countries. And the then German chancellor, she tried to make fun of the Muslim countries. At that particular point of time, I think it was Turkiya, which was the only Muslim country that it generously hosted them. 3.5 million is a huge number. By all standards, it is a huge number. President Tayyip Erdogan, personally, his political party has had to suffer in the election results because of these refugees. But I think at least the president stood for his ideology. He accommodated these refugees, and now this is the high time. There are great expectations inside Turkey that these refugees will go back. But again, certainly they will go back, but I don't think that all of them will go back.
Well, let's talk about Russia as well, because they have been a key ally of Syria throughout the war, with supporting the pre-Assad regime, given Turkey's increasing cooperation with Syria's interim government. How might Moscow react to these developments, in your opinion? And how could this shift disrupt or complement Russia's regional ambitions?
Well, I think with the change of guard in Damascus, with the HTS government there, now things have changed altogether. Russia has lost strategically, but though its military bases are still there, despite the fact that its own installed government, Assad regime, is no longer there, because at one particular point of time, it was Russia which was floating the Assad regime. Now, I think strategically it has lost. We don't know at this particular point of time that how far the HTS government is going to deal with the Russian military bases in Syria. But all indicators are that perhaps in one way or the other, possibly the new government in Damascus would allow Russia to go along with these military bases. But it really depends, once again, that what kind of relationship the US is going to have with the HTS government, what kind of relationship the European government is going to have with the HTS government, and how Russia is going to cooperate with the new government in Damascus. I mean, there are many ifs and buts, but Russia's role obviously has extraordinarily diminished. I think it is the Turkiya which has effectively replaced the role of not only of Russia, but also the role of Iran. And that is a very important, because in a broader picture, if you see, if you make a kind of a comparison, drawing some comparison of what was the situation before the fall of the Assad regime and what is the situation right now, Assad regime was being militarily, politically, diplomatically supported by Iran and Russia. They were basically floating that regime artificially with the pumping of billions of US dollars, particularly by Iran, and all kind of the supplies of the weapons, despite the fact that the Assad regime had simply lost right from within Syria in terms of the political support it used to carry in parts of Syria. And as a matter of fact, it never had that kind of support. It was a brutal regime. Now, I think it is all open-ended. Turkey, in terms of reconstruction, it is coming up in a big way, providing all kind of funding, providing all kind of the material that requires to reconstruct Syria. So, and then more importantly, all kind of food supplies are there. And since the change of guard in Damascus, there is obviously a surge in the import and export. The trade has gone up now. That is an extraordinary thing happening. And my understanding is that if any country is going to militarily build up Syria once again after Israel literally basically vanished the military power of the Syrian government, I think it is going to be the Turkey, because Turkey, in terms of it's a defense industrial complex, it's a very powerful. It has all kind of the weapons, and it has been supplying weapons to so many other countries. And obviously, Syria is going to get a lot of concessions in terms of the weapon supplies. But again, the bigger threat to the stability in Syria is the apartheid regime. And how far that can be controlled and contained, new Syrian president has been saying he has been basically requesting, urging the international community to contain apartheid state. That is not going to happen. The apartheid state's Prime Minister Netanyahu has time and again said in a very arrogant manner that Israel has redrawn the maps of the Middle East, which means that it has control a large swaths of the Syria from the Golan Heights. The buffer zone has been taken over by the Syria. And in a similar fashion, it has taken over parts of the Lebanon, and obviously we know that the apartheid state's military is still there on the Egyptian and Gaza border. It is still there in parts of northern Gaza, and it has been occupying in the West Bank, parts of the West Bank, and it intends to basically take over the entire region. So in that context, I think the biggest source of instability and the biggest security threat to Syria is are not the terrorist groups like PKK or the so-called Islamic State. It is Israel, which has been not only supporting all these terrorist groups to destabilize Syria inside, to destabilize even Turkey from inside, because these terrorist groups have been, over the period of time, these terrorist groups have been engaged in all kind of terror activities, they have killed thousands of Turkish people. And then I think the biggest threat to Syrian government is obviously, very obviously, are not only these terrorist groups, but also the possible external aggression of apartheid state.
Well, you have actually really went through the situation with Iran and Russia, but I would like to ask you about the Iranian situation once more, because we were talking about Russia. But what would you say about, as you mentioned, Iran has long supported the previous Syrian regime as well, and we know that they have been funding, as you underlined, the Assad regime as well. So under these circumstances, what would you say about the relationship with Ankara and Tehran to unfold in the upcoming days and years?
I think Turkey has been managing its relation with Iran in a very cool-headed manner. Iran, because has been the biggest source of political and security issues, insecurity in the Middle East, along with Israel, because Israel has turned out to be a country which is a territorially expanding. Iran has been ideologically expanding by basically promoting, encouraging, funding, supporting all kinds of the militant groups like Hezbollah, and then taking over basically entire Syria, because where the 87% population is a Sunni, and hardly there is a very minority population is a Shia. Nonetheless, Iran provided all kind of weaponry support along with Russia, which helped Syrian government to stay floated. So in that context, I would say that Iranian pursued a very sectarian kind of agenda, where the majority population was brutalized. We have seen tens of thousands, I would say rather hundreds of thousands of Syrians. They were killed. Maybe around 600,000 people were killed over the period of the time, and Iranians are responsible. Iran was drawing people on sectarian grounds from countries like Pakistan, from where I belong to, in Pakistan's tribal region, thousands of Pakistani who were belonging to the Shia community, they were taken to Syria, and they were fighting against the majority group. Now, with the change of guard in Damascus, I think that situation has changed. No longer Iran can provide weaponry support to its militant groups inside Syria. But I think there is also setback to the Hezbollah, which partly was supporting the Palestinian cause. But nonetheless, Hezbollah was also pursuing a sectarian agenda. And very unlike Iran, Turkey doesn't have any sectarian agenda. It has clearly two major objectives in Syria. First, Turkey wants a stable Syria. Partly, it wants to send all those Syrian refugees back to their country. That is one objective. And the second objective is obviously PKK terrorist groups, and they have been engaged in all kind of terror activities, killing Turkish people. Obviously, Turkey wants the HS government to come down hard against these terrorist groups, and I think partially that agenda is being pursued by the new government. So I think in a broader picture, now the bigger question here is that what kind of relationship are likely between Iran and Turkey? A question that you have originally raised. I think, again, my understanding is that under the leadership of President Tayyip Erdogan, I think Ankara is going to manage that relationship. This relationship is going to be on ideal grounds. But again, Turkey is a kind of country which has managed to, I think, in a very difficult situation, it has managed to have a smooth relations, even with Russia, when there was a very hostile condition in Syria, when Russia was bombing all entire Sunni population, and these Syrian refugees were basically sneaking into Turkey. At that point of time, I think Turkey played a key role, and it managed its relationship. Even Ukraine war, Turkey's role has been as a neutral empire. I think in a similar fashion now, when Iran has lost, it has militarily, it has been degraded, it has been basically sidelined from the bigger picture that is developing in the Middle East now, because it can no longer provide weapon supplies to its militant groups on sectarian grounds in Syria and also in Lebanon. I think in that context, Turkey would be managing its relationship with Iran, but obviously Iran would not be happy the kind of the situation that exists in Syria, but it is largely of Iran's own making.
Well, Javed, thank you so much for your answers, and thank you so much for joining us here on A News. Thank you.
The growing tide of anti-Israel sentiments. What you see behind me is just tip of the iceberg of what is happening in the country. More than half of $52 billion black CIA budget is spent on espionage network in Pakistan. How would you handle it?
The US has looked upon Pakistan as an ally at one point, and then as an enemy at the same time.
That is going to be the first legal reason on the basis of which he is going to be instantly ousted by the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
Joining us live, Javed Rana, who's an expert on politics and geo-strategic issues.
In the world politics, which is not being driven by any moral principle, it is being driven by the hard geo-strategic realities. In a broader picture, more countries would aspire to have nuclear weapons.